My name is Pastor Sylvia Harris, and I just wanted to offer you some reflection, some thought on today. Today is Thursday, December the 10th, and December the 10th, if you didn't know it, is Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's a day that the United Nations has set aside to declare that all of humanity, all people have certain rights, and I just wanted to highlight it, point it out. During the season of Advent, we are called as followers of Christ to really highlight and shine a light into the world that reflects the fullness of God's creation, that reflects the fullness of God's intention in terms of God's kingdom coming to earth. And one of the things that we know is that when that day comes, when the fullness of God's kingdom is revealed here in the world, that the things that separate us will no longer separate us. The things that divide us will no longer divide us. When God's kingdom is fully realized, there won't be a hierarchy, of people who have and people who have not. And so on this day that the United Nations has declared a Universal Declaration of Human Rights, I just wanted to offer some thoughts on what that means. What are our rights as human beings? Do we have the right to access healthcare? Do we have the right to running water? Do we have the right to sustainable food? Do we have the right to a living wage? Do we have the right to access education? Do we have the right to affordable housing? Do we have the right, regardless of gender, to decide whether or not we want to get married and have kids? Do we have the right to know that if we are going to bear children in this world, that we will survive through childbirth? Do we have the right to clothing, to shoes, to glasses, if we need glasses, What are our rights? What are the things that we should simply be able to have because we are born? And as such, every person born is born in the image of God. Do we really take the time ever to think about what that means as Christians, as people who follow Christ? Do we understand the implications when we set up rule of law, or when we continue to perpetuate cultural standards and norms? Do we recognize what those things do to the rights of people who are different than us? To the rights of, let's say, the immigrant, the foreigner among us, to the rights of children? Do we recognize what these things do to the rights of women? Do we recognize what these things do to the rights of people who are different ethnic or racial makeup than what we are? Do we recognize what the rules and laws do to the people who experience homelessness, to the people who experience depression or anxiety, the people who experience the long-term effects of trauma? Do we recognize the rights of people who struggle with addiction? Do we recognize the rights of people who just simply aren't like us? People who experience physical limitations. Do we recognize that even in these things that make us different, the reflection of God? And I think if we take seriously the concept that the people who are different than us reflect God to us, we might start to get a fuller picture of who God is And we might start to recognize that the right to live, and not just the right to live in the survival sense, but the right to live in the sense of thriving, of being fully alive in this world, and being able to have access to all of the things that privilege some. If all people had access to the things that some who are privileged enough take for granted, what would the world actually look like? I don't know. I don't know, but I think that if we worked towards that, if we worked towards recognizing how systems and laws and the things that we have that are designed to maintain status quo, if we take a look at all of those things and the way that they intersect, we might decide that we need to actually tear some of those things down. We might decide we need to actually rework some of those things, because when we reflect and we consider the way that the world could be fully made and fully realized if we allowed all people to have the right to live fully. I think that if we recognize the beauty of what that could be, we could start to see some of what the scriptures tell us. I'm thinking of Revelation, and in the book of Revelation, when John describes, John of Patmos is describing all nations and races and tribes and all people worshiping God. And are we actually doing what we can to embody that? Are we actually doing what we can to create that world around us? And I think if we were actually working towards that goal, we wouldn't need to have days like today where globally we declare universal human rights, because universal human rights would be a given. And until that day comes, I just pray that as the church, we can do everything in our power to move us towards that place, where we highlight the disparities and we push towards the things that can truly unify us in our diversity. So those are my thoughts. I hope to see you here on Sunday at 10 o'clock, when we will have another opportunity to hear the word and to step forward a little bit more into this season of Advent, where we'll recognize a little bit of the 75th anniversary of Wesley United Methodist Church. It's a huge experience and honor and privilege to step into this role at this time, knowing that this community has been here for 75 years. Our official anniversary is December the 23rd, and so I'll be talking about what that looks like as we continue to move towards having existed in this community for 75 years. I look forward to seeing you Sunday. Thank you, and God bless.